hoping you can just give us your reaction to the last two conversations that we have heard from the chair and ranking member of this science committee. We had Chair Babin really talk about how important it is to cut red tape and regulation and look through the government to see where waste, fraud, and abuse could be cut. And then you have ranking member Lofgren talking about how this already is having an extreme impact on the science community and the US's ability to stay competitive. What do you make of this?
Yeah, so as everybody knows, it's been a bit of a hectic time figuring out where the boat is going. I think some of the things that we've seen, Hugging Face is a platform that sees a lot of the research that's going on from lots of different people. And what we've seen is that AI progress is about the people who do the research. And we've had lots of great interactions with the folks at NIST, with the folks we're helping along as much as we can with NAIR, boosting up that research, something that we can't really do without. With all considerations to efficiency, that should be a priority.
Okay. Do you think that there is more in common than we tend to think when it comes to science and tech between Republicans and Democrats on the Hill?
I mean, we've had great experiences talking to people across the aisle about the idea of figuring out what it is that we need to be doing, with the shared understanding that we do need to have technology that's going to work better, and that's going to work better for the people of the United States in a way that is going to be more reliable all of the time. So that's something that we all want to move towards. Sometimes these agreements, not just across the aisle, but between different developers, between different industrial actors about the best way to do that. And there's going to be some of those disagreements. I think we can move forward together on that basis of scientific understanding of the technology, transparency about what's going on there, and building up our ability to innovate, evaluate, and understand the technology.
Yeah, and I definitely want to go back to the transparency aspect of this, but to zoom out a little bit, Hugging Face has been very vocal about democratizing AI, and I'm wondering how those goals are running up against DOGE and the potential impact that cutting the federal workforce has on these science and tech agencies.
Yeah, I mean, we're a platform and open source company. So our whole reason for being is building infrastructure that allows tons of different people around the world to do their best work and contribute to what we know about AI. Democratizing means lots of things for lots of different people. For us, is getting as many people as possible building, evaluating, and critiquing sometimes the technology. So with that in mind, we're going to be in favor of having support, of building the things that are going to benefit every single actor.
Now, Hugging Face specifically is involved in the NAIR pilot at NSF. Can you tell us what the latest on that is? Are you facing any challenges in ensuring this equitable access?
Yeah, so NAIR had their pilot last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which was a great time to take stock of what's been going on. With the understanding that it's a pilot, everybody was figuring out how things needed to work out of the time. I think some of the things to praise there this has been a much shorter turnaround on getting resources in the hands of people who need them than your typical NSF grant. And that's something that we're going to need to have, grad students who need to write a paper in 6 months, or kind of all of that ecosystem of people doing the research working faster. We'll see what we can do better in the next year and in the coming years, and how much funding there is, how many people contribute, how that goes forward.
So has DOGE been disruptive to that so far from what you've been able to see?
Not in my personal experience, but I do not have eyes on every aspect of the project.
Sure. There has been a noticeable shift away from AI safety. We saw the UK changed its AI Safety Institute to an AI Security Institute. What do you make of this? Is it as simple as a name change? Is it a bigger policy change? What are your views on that?
The safety word has been so debated and meant so many things to so many different people, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to the word change specifically. I think there are still some good people there looking on understanding what safety means to them, what security means to them, how it connects to how we try to make traditional technology safer, how we make software safer. So the sharper a focus we have on taking lessons from technology that we already know and adapting to AI, the more positive it's going to be. So I'm hoping that that's where we're headed with those changes.
And here in the US, as my colleague Ashley mentioned before, we have reported that the AI Safety Institute is undergoing some major changes to its staff and potentially its policy goals moving forward. Does that concern you at all?
I mean, we have met some great people there. It would be ideal if they were able to keep doing their job in a way that's supported. If not, there are some exciting developments in having more open technology happening in industry and in academia. And those same people will be doing that job, hopefully, some way there. Having a centralized entity like the ASI does have a value in making sure that we don't reproduce work that don't need to be reproducing, that we do give access to some of the more sensitive details of the technology in a place that is more controlled. So there needs to be a space to do that.
Yeah. And of course, what NIST was working on, what the AI Safety Institute was working on, was ultimately voluntary. What do you think Congress's role is in implementing some of these transparency measures and other safeguards for the deployment of AI?
I mean, we'll see how the priorities land. We have been broadly supportive of transparency, as previously mentioned, as a measure, because balanced transparency is something that is just good science, it's good technology to have a documentation of the things that you're working with. It's something that can be done without a very high cost to the developers, and we're talking about like not coming in the way of innovation that spurs innovation more than it puts any barriers. And it does provide a very strong foundation for any other agent, any other stakeholders to do what they need to do to hold the technology accountable when it needs to be.
Yeah. So you envision maybe Congress passing a law in this specific space?
That could be one way forward, yeah.
Okay. You were just at the AI summit in Paris. Can you give us your big takeaways from there, and how do you see open source playing a role in international cooperation around AI?
One of the, I think, most shared visions at the summit, and that was a change from previous summits, was everybody's talking about openness. Everybody's excited about openness, about having more shared resources. One of the outcomes of the summit was creating a foundation that has some private funding and that's going to be playing some of that role of pushing up more open data sets, more open techniques to manage the technology. So that's definitely an exciting development. We still have disagreements about what level of openness is required to really move the technology forward in a way that works for everybody. But that's something we can figure out.
Do you have a sense of where the Trump administration might land on this debate at this point?
You know, we're working with the same signals you all have. We did see that the vice president was supportive of openness in his speech. Mm-hmm. We'll see how that plays out in practice.
I want to get your reaction to the DeepSeek news. You know, it caused quite a bit of panic here in the US when the newest model of DeepSeek came out. What do you make of that reaction, and what do you make of that technology itself?
I know that the greatest surprise from me and my colleagues was how surprised everybody was. Like, we had seen that coming. There are, I don't know, about a dozen leading AI labs in China that have been releasing models, that have been developing their own techniques in many ways and releasing models that have been popular, that have been especially meeting the needs for smaller models that people can use. So it did not come out of nowhere. It came after lots of progress that was spurred, in our view, by their tendency to cooperate and to share the models that they develop and to share some of the lessons that they have along the way. The US has also done that in many ways, right? Like, we know that some of what Microsoft did on synthetic data with their 5 models, they shared enough that other companies, American and otherwise, were able to leverage that and move forward. So there's a bit of a cycle. Sometimes it's going to be more on the US side, sometimes more on the China side. We would like to see more open collaboration in the US. We would like to see more of our colleagues here riding that wave of knowing what to share, knowing how to move forward together. And yeah, we'll see how that goes.
What did you make of the focus on the amount of money that was spent by DeepSeek versus OpenAI and some of the companies here in the US? Was that the right way to think about this?
So with some caveats that some of the numbers were maybe not quite accurate, there is a lesson to be learned there that there's much that can be done by focusing on efficiency and by focusing on algorithms that do not necessarily require the largest amount of compute to get the smartest technology. things work together, right? Like if you have more compute, that can be great, that can be one way forward. If you have more efficient algorithm, that can be great, that can add up or play in different ways, or that can take you in an entire different direction. I think it's a good signal that we need broader innovation, that we need to pursue things that are not just pouring trillions of dollars into compute centers in the US, and that the way forward is going to be something that's shared by smaller actors, startups, universities, everybody who works on their own version of AI and what it means to them.
And so Hugging Face researchers are developing a more open version of DeepSeek's AI reasoning model. What motivated this initiative, and how do you envision it impacting the AI community?
Yeah, so we saw what the DeepSeek folks had done, and we're all very interested in science and in making things understandable and that can be studied by everybody. So I think that was the main motivation. One of the exciting things about this company is that everybody comes with their own motivation and their own goals, and we find things that we're all excited to work together. And in this case, that R1 reproduction was a really cool project. Some of the consequences, we hope, are going to be that this will enable small and medium actors in the US to train their own versions of the models in ways that work better for them from scratch, with the data that they know, with the settings that they know for deployment. We hope that this will unlock more innovation that is related to what was done for DeepSeek R1 in ways that might take us in other directions. And I also want to say that one of the great things about open research is we're not doing it by ourselves. There's lots of other teams at universities, in nonprofits, in startups who are working on other bits and pieces of that DeepSeek model. Mm-hmm. And bringing all of that together makes us hopeful that we'll get there soon and that we'll find lots of interesting things along the way.
Yeah. And AI's impact on society is part of your job. How are you thinking about this movement to really invest in data centers in the US and meeting those energy demands to win this, global tech race? That compared to the environmental concerns that people have brought up, or the ways in which these data centers can raise people's bills and the prices of their electricity bills. How are you balancing these things in your mind?
I mean, it's as every single other question where it's a question of balance, right? Like, even if your goal is to get the most compute, you're going to want to work on making things more efficient, not just like get more compute and more compute and never be asked to make the most out of the compute that you have. There's going to be demands for energy for AI. There's going to be demands on energy for lots of other things. So that's something where maybe a little bit more perspective could be welcome.
What do you make of the arguments that open source models come with certain risks? And should there be policies or frameworks in place to mitigate such risks? Yeah, so in our view, I've hinted to that a little bit. If we want to push innovation forward, there's going to be two pillars supporting it. And some is going to be private investment that has its own rewards. Some is going to be open development, which means that there isn't any sustainable AI governance without an intentional way to do open system governance. It's not that it's riskier, it's that it has different risk profile and different things that work against those risks. So if you're looking at open development, you're going to have more gradual increases. You're going to have more time to see things coming. You're going to have more eyes on the issues, like the common open source mantra that many eyes make all bugs shallow, right? Like if you have lots of people looking at those issues, then that's something that can help you fix them ahead of time and more efficiently. So we want to talk more, like that's a lot of what we do in our job here when we talk to people on the Hill, and kind of trying to get a shared understanding that we're talking about different systems. That's okay, that's something that we need to address. The Trump administration right now is fielding comments for a new AI executive order. They're redoing what the previous administration had done. What advice would you have for them? And are you actively trying to shape that new approach?
Yeah, so that request is quite open-ended, so there's lots to cover on there. Getting more visibility on AI systems that people are using for their own purposes, are developing for their own purposes. I think one of the things that we're hoping to see is that AI as a technology is something that all actors who want to use AI can kind of develop for themselves. And that includes, the way car industry had to learn about software, right? It wasn't put in the hand of a few companies developing software for everybody else. So that's probably going to be one of the points of recommendations that we make there.
All right, great. Well, we are getting the hook here. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.